From thinking that credit cards are terrible, to believing that I need to make millions first to start investing, to thinking that banks are God and I can never negotiate with banks. My personal finance mistakes are too many to count. Honestly, it's embarrassing. But with every pain comes important lessons. In today's video, I will be sharing with you my top 10 personal finance lessons that I learned over the last few years. A lot of the times when I share about the cashback that I get through my credit card, people ask me how I do that. So if you want to know what are the credit cards that I use and how I manage to get so much in cashback, then wait for point number 9 to know how that is done. The video is broken down into chapters, so feel free to skip to the chapter that interests you the most. If you're new to personal finance, then I hope that this video will inspire you to get started on this journey. And if you're already managing your finances well, then I hope that this video will help cement that knowledge for you. Hi there, I'm Tanya Stanley, a career mom obsessed with self-growth, and in my channel I share with you my best hacks to living life to your fullest potential. So if you're new to my channel, welcome, and do hit the like button. Also, I'm not a personal finance expert, so make sure to take everything with a grain of salt and do your own research before you implement them in your life. Without any further ado, let's get started. I've been working from the age of 21, but I never learned about personal finance. I never learned about budgeting, investing, none of that. My dad is a business owner and my mom is a homemaker, which means that we never spoke about personal finance. We just assumed that dad will take care of all the finances and it's the man's responsibility. But when COVID hit, there were many flaws, many gaps in the way money was managed that came to light during COVID period. There was also a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, which actually got me started. In the book, Robert Kiyosaki says that your wealth is measured based on how many months you can live without your current job. And when I did my calculation, that was very too few months. Until then, I assumed that it's about being able to wear a Louis Vuitton bag or a big house or a big car, but it's none of that. It's about the number of months you can live by without having a job. And that is what lit the fire for me to get started. In addition to that, when I had my daughter and all of these responsibilities came up, the bills and finances, investment, future, all of these really gave me panic attacks and anxiety attacks. It was very hard for me to go to sleep peacefully. I assumed that being cheap was the right way to go. So let's say instead of buying seafood, I started buying chicken. And instead of buying fresh chicken, you could save more money by buying frozen chicken. But no matter what I do, no matter how cheap I try to live, I was never getting the feeling of safety in the way I was managing my finances. And that is why I decided that I'm going to get started learning about it. I read a couple of books, The Psychology of Money, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Balance, which talks about how money affects your happiness. But the one that made the most sense to me and gave me step-by-step instructions is Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich. In order to understand why you need to start investing, you will need to understand what inflation means. In simple terms, inflation is the rate at which the prices of goods increase over a period of time. Between 2019 and 2020, the inflation percentage for UAE was 6.67%. What this means is that if you used to spend 1,000 dirhams buying groceries in 2019, you will now have to spend 1,067 dirhams to buy the same amount of groceries. In the same way, your rent, your fuel prices, every other goods prices increase as well. In Sudan, this is 382.82%, which means that they will now have to spend 1,382 dirhams to buy the same amount of groceries in 2020. So what do? How do you beat inflation? Well, unless your income is also increasing by the same amount, which is 6.67%, then you could probably live by. Or else you will need to cut back on your expenses. I lived this way. I tried to cut back as much as possible. But then what happened was my anxiety did not reduce and my world started shrinking more and more. I stopped dreaming. My life just became colorless. Everything became constrictive. This was not the right way to live. You need to increase your income. But how? What do I do? Banks scare me. An SMS from the bank, a notice from the bank, a bank saying that you have missed your payment, all of this freak me out. And this is because I do not know the concept of banking, how this came about, and how the banks are actually looting you for money. Let's get that figured out first. So what exactly is banking and how did this came about? Banking began as early as 1800 BC in Babylon. Back in the days, what people used to do is they used to lend money to their friends and relatives for a small percentage of interest. But as people started becoming more and more wealthy, they needed a safe space to make sure that all of their wealth was safe. And temples became that place, because in temples, well, this is the place of God, so nobody would steal from there. And there were also more security there. So they started putting all of their wealth and money in the temples. What the temples used to do is that because they had access to a large sum of money through people's wealth and also through donations, etc., they started lending money to people for a small percentage of interest. And then the temples were able to offer much lesser percentage of interest compared to the other people. Over time, the priests in temples started becoming really wealthy. And when wars broke out, the first place they would attack was also temples. In the Bible, there is this example of Jesus driving out the moneylenders from the temples. So this is what is happening even now. We have money here and we do not want to keep it in our house because it's not safe. So we want to deposit in some bank account. Our salaries will be deposited there. Our savings will be deposited there. And the banks will take all of our money and then lend it out to other people in the form of credit cards, loans, etc. And then they make money off of our money, which means that if I did not deposit my salary in a particular bank, then they won't be able to make money. So they are actually our customer. They should be able to convince us that they are a good bank because they need our money for them to survive. So we do have the upper hand to negotiate for the best deal possible and to choose the best bank and demand what we want out of them. Defining your rich life is the most important step. Let's take an example. I have a friend, her name is Natalia. She loves traveling. So she earns 100,000 dirhams a year and she's kept aside a budget of 20,000 dirhams for traveling. I have another friend, Sam, who also earns 100,000 dirhams a year, but his expense or budget for travel is just 5,000. Now you might assume that Natalia is traveling so much, so she's not saving as much. And Sam, on the other hand, doesn't do any sort of traveling, so he's probably saving more. But let's add one more factor into the picture. Natalia does not care about where she stays. So she lives in a one-bedroom apartment in the outskirts of Ajman. Sam, on the other hand, cares about where he stays. He wants to live in this nice, cozy apartment with amazing views in downtown Dubai. And he pays 40,000 dirhams on rent, whereas Natalia pays 20,000 dirhams on rent. So now, Natalia's expenses is 40,000 and Sam's is 45,000. Who is saving more? Natalia. So the point is that when you see someone spending more on luxury items or on travel or having a bigger house, do not compare your life to theirs, because their definition of rich life will be different from your definition of rich life. You need to define what your definition of rich life means. When I wrote this down, I opened my book and I started writing down stuff like, okay, a big house. But then I realized that I actually don't care about a big house. To me, a big house means large amounts of mortgages and being stuck to a place. What if I don't want to stay in that place? I'm not ready to be grounded at the moment with a big house. But on the other hand, I do love traveling. Not even as much. Twice a year is enough for me. I do like shopping. That too not much either. Maybe twice a month is fine for me. Eating out 4 times a month is fine for me. So this is what my definition of rich life means. When I used to see my friends buying houses, it used to make me feel jealous, to be very honest with you. But now that I have defined what rich life means to me, it doesn't make me jealous anymore, because now I know that this is not what makes me happy. It is this one. So step 1, open your journal right now and write down, what would rich life mean to you if money was never an obstacle? This is going to clarify so many things in your head. So now that we have defined what our goal looks like, let's figure out what our current process is. In order to understand the gaps in our current process, we need to find out what our process is, right? And that is where tracking your expenses come into the picture. Now, I was scared of tracking expenses. I was afraid what I might find. And I also assumed that I needed to manually sit and track every expense. Like every time I spend something, I'll need to write it down somewhere. So all of this was just too cumbersome and I didn't want to do it. But guess what? You do have free and paid personal expense tracking apps like Mint, Wally, and so on. I use Wally in UAE. All that you need to do is connect your banks to this app, and then the app will show you what your income is and what all of your expenses are. And at the end of the month, you can just see in one dashboard how your expenses look like. It's that simple. The second thing, once I started tracking my expenses, I realized that my grocery budget is around 1,000 to 1,500 dirhams every single month. And that made it so much more easier, which means that me trying to save up on seafood and trying to buy frozen chicken was definitely a dumb idea. And then I stopped doing that and I started buying more good produce. I started buying more steaks. I started buying matcha powders. I started investing more into it because I realized that no matter how much I spend on good quality food, it's still not as much as I thought it would come out to be. And I never compromised on my groceries anymore. Understanding the difference between what account is and what are the pros and cons of each account when you open it in a bank is so important. So what exactly is current account and savings account? A current account is a bank account in which you can store and withdraw money often. Typically, you would store around 1.5 months of your monthly expenses in your current account. So let's say you're earning 15,000 dirhams and your expenses in a month is 7,000 dirhams. Then your current account will have no more than 10,500 dirhams in that account. The mistake I was making is that I opened an account in a bank without looking into what sort of an account that was. The reason why I opened an account in ADCB was because my father knew the cashier. I know. When opening a current account, there are a few things you need to make sure. One, there should be no minimum balance required, no monthly maintenance fee, no overdraft fee, no fee for you to pull out cash from any ATM other than the bank ATM, free checkbook, free debit card, basically no maintenance fees whatsoever. They should be lucky that you are depositing your salary into their account. So if a bank is trying to make money out of your ATMs and 2 dirhams, 1 dirham, all of that here and there, they're being a very cheap bank and there's so many better options out there. So I called up ADCB, which was my bank at that point of time, and I asked them, are you charging me fees, maintenance fees? They were charging me 2 dirhams every time I withdraw cash from any ATM other than ADCB's ATM. That's cheap. Then I also realized that I did have to maintain a monthly minimum balance, which is around 3,000 dirhams. I didn't want that, so I pulled out all of the cash from ADCB. That was a mistake too, and I will explain. A savings account is a bank account where you can get 1 to 3% of whatever you're depositing in that account. I know 1 to 3% isn't a big amount, but then it is still something when you consider that inflation rate was 6.67% between 2019 and 2020. When you're looking for a savings account, try to see which one offers the maximum rate of interest back. Also, it should be no minimum balance as usual. You should also be able to, if possible, open subcategories under the same account. So let's say you open a savings account and maybe you want to open a travel account, one for expenses, one for the mistakes that you're making, one for a wedding, etc. You should also be able to invest freely from that particular account. Typically, these online banks like Live accounts will offer a high rate of interest, but what I noticed when I opened an account in Live is that the customer service was practically non-existent. So I continued to open an account in Emirates NBD savings account. They were offering 2% back. Now that you know the difference between what a current or a checking account is and what a savings account is, make sure to open your current or checking account in one bank and your savings account in another bank. Do you know why? Because then you know that when you're pulling out this particular card, let's say ADCB is the one that I'm using for a current account. I don't like ADCB, so it just came to the mind. If this is the card that you're using, then this card you will use for regular expenses. You know, you want to pull out cash, daily needs, etc. Whereas this one is, let's say, in Emirates NBD, and this is your savings account. This card you will not use because you know that this is for savings, and this one will just have 1.5 months of your monthly expenses, and this is where you will have more amount of money in it and you will not touch it. So it's in two separate banks, and it is going to be slightly more difficult for you to transfer money between both the accounts, although it doesn't make a difference here, but it will still mentally create this perception in your mind that this is something you can use and this is for your savings. You don't touch it. Now here is an interesting story. One of the things that Ramit Sethi said is that there is a way you could waive off a lot of the fees. So I made a mistake of closing the bank account. I didn't really close ADCB bank account. I pulled out all of the money out of there and put it into Emirates NBD. But then I did not call them and close the account. So what happened was, over the few months when I checked the account after I read the book, I realized that they were charging me around 200 dirhams every single month for not maintaining my minimum balance. Old me would have just assumed that that's it, I just have to pay it, I have no other way around it. But then Ramit said that call the bank and tell them, hey XYZ bank, I have been a great customer of yours for the last 5 years and I am considering coming back into the bank and using it again, but can you please help me out and waive off all of these penalties and fees that you have charged me? I called the bank up and I said the exact same thing. I've read it off the script. And guess what? The guy said, okay madam, let me think about it, let me check. And then, you know, obviously he went there and he did a bunch of acting and all of that, and he came back and said, all right, all of your fees are waived off. I was shocked. I cried. I was like, what? Was this even possible? They waived off everything. So it is possible. You can waive off fees like this. By the way, if you've been liking the video so far, then make sure to hit the like button. Oh, and if you want to go that extra mile and cement a relationship together, then hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that every time I post a new video, you will get notified. What an important topic. The first 28 years of my life, I never touched a credit card because this was the only finance advice my father gave. Do not touch credit cards, they are bad. Now, when you play life in the defense, you are not going to learn anything out of it. Trying to avoid credit cards altogether because it's a bad thing, because you do not know how to manage money, is stupid. The right way to live life is to playing life in the offense. Understand how credit cards are being used, and you're going to be ahead of 99% of the people. So this is what I did. The first 28 years, no credit cards. Then I saw a post on Instagram that said you need to use credit cards and leverage that. So what did I do? I took 7 different credit cards from 7 different banks. What happened at the end of it? I was not able to manage any of these credit cards. I started getting fees left, right, and center, and I did not understand what these fees meant. VAT fees, pay protect fees, annual payment fees, dad fees, insurance fees, a couple of fees I just could not understand. And the third thing, while choosing credit cards, I chose them when they said that, hey, this is going to offer you 2 donuts, this is going to offer you 3 Dunkin' Donuts. Is that how you choose credit cards? No. Let me explain the right way to go about using credit cards and using it to your advantage. Step 1, understand the difference between the 2 types of credit cards. So there are 2 types of credit cards. One is the Air Miles, the traveler's card, and the second one is the cashback credit card. Which one you use depends on your kind of expenses. So if you are someone who travels a lot, then the traveler Air Miles card is probably what suits you the best. If you're someone who doesn't travel, then probably a cashback credit card where you get cash back for every time you're spending money on groceries, fuel, schooling, etc. Now the issue with an Air Miles card is that redeeming all of these Air Miles back is quite difficult. Also, when you're choosing credit cards, make sure that it has got low APR, low late payment fees, and low interest. So APR means the annual percentage rate. It means that if you're borrowing money from the bank and credit cards, what is the rate percentage of interest that you'll have to pay back when you're paying the money back to the bank? One trick that the banks almost always do when they call you to offer credit cards is something called information overload. You ask them, okay, what does this card offer you? Then they could start off with, you get 2 donuts, you get 3 Vox tickets, you go to that park, you get Legoland, you get that, this, etc. Now you know none of that matters. This is what they do so that you do not ask them what are the right questions and what is the right thing to ask when looking for a credit card. So you know when it comes to cards, for a credit card, make sure that the percentage that you get back for a cashback credit card is high. When I was looking for credit cards, I looked at everything, and the one that was paying the maximum was Dubai First credit card. The Dubai First credit card was offering 6% back on groceries and 1% back on all the other spend. And I do spend a lot on groceries, and 1% for me was also a big deal. If you're someone who travels more, then you can look for credit cards that offer maximum back, cash back for fuel spend. Some banks offer even 10% for the fuel that you use, which is a big deal. If you're doing international spend, they say that. So if you're someone who travels outside, you have to go to India and then you have to buy things there. So you look for the credit card that offers maximum cash back for international spend. If you are someone who shops online a lot, or maybe you have a business and you want to buy a lot of inventory that you're placing orders online, you could use the credit card that offers maximum back on online spend. So there are so many different things that you can look into based on what exactly or where exactly you spend your money on. Every percentage you get back matters. Remember, the target is to beat the inflation percent every single year. Do you think you would be able to ask a 500 dirhams raise to your manager without having to prove to them all of the ways you have achieved the target the last year? So getting money back for spending money is something you need to take complete advantage of. Always make sure to pay your credit cards off in full every single month. A few things to remember. Do not keep more than 2 to 3 cards. 2 cards, 3 cards in itself is a lot. You won't be able to manage. Second thing, make sure to automate the payment of these credit cards. The mistake I made was that I did not automate the payment of these cards. I used to manually pay this, and because of which I did miss the deadline for one of the payments in Dubai First. 1,200 dirhams when with the Binance fee, I don't know what kind of fees, but I got charged like a big chunk of money. Try not to ever get penalized for late payments, because this is how the banks make money off of you. Make sure that the billing cycle of all of your credit cards occur at the same time. So it's usually the first of the month or towards the end of the month, and this depends on when you get paid your salary. So I get paid during the last week of the month, so I've made sure that the billing cycle is also the last week of the month, and this is also automated, so I will never miss a payment ever. If you are someone who has debt to pay with any of the credit credit cards, then call up the bank and negotiate the APR down, which is the annual percentage rate down. How do you do that? So you threaten the bank by telling them, hey, listen, if you don't reduce the APR, can you please reduce the APR down? They will say, no, madam, I won't be able to do that. So then you say, but you know what, this other bank, the RAC bank, they're offering me much better APRs, so I could, pay this off in full. What you're trying to say is, so you've got Mashreq Bank and then you've got 100,000 dirhams in debt in the RAC bank, and you're telling them, can you reduce the APR down? They're saying, no, we won't be able to. Mashreq Bank is saying, hey, you can use a credit card, you can pull out all of your money out and you could use this to pay off this in full. So if I use Mashreq to pay this off in full, then the percentage of interest that they were supposed to get is going to get reduced, right? Because you're paying it off in full. Whereas Mashreq Bank is now going to get paid for the debt that you have. So for both of these banks, this is how you negotiate the APR down. You call them and tell them, if you don't reduce the APR, then I'm going to use some other bank to pay off your debt. Budgeting does not mean you be cheap. I've heard about the 60-20-10-10 rule, but I never understood what it means. So this is what exactly it means. When you get your salary, the first 60% is going to be for your fixed expenses, which is your rent, car payment, your insurance, etc. And 20% is for guilt-free spending. 10% is for savings. 10% is for investment. So let's say you earn 15,000 dirhams. So your salary comes into your Emirates NBD Bank. The first thing you do is you pay off all of your debts, your rent, your insurance, your credit cards, everything. You're keeping aside 9,000 dirhams for all of that. So once that is paid off, you keep aside 1,500 dirhams for your savings. So maybe you're using HSBC Bank for your savings account because they're offering a high rate of interest. So you move aside 1,500 there. Then 1,500 dirhams for your investment. So you can use something like a robo-advisor like Sarva. So Sarva will invest it into stocks, cryptocurrency, all of that. So use Sarva. It's very easy to use. It's just an app. You don't need to speak to anybody. And if you do want to speak to someone, they're always available on WhatsApp, so you can speak to them. Now you have 3,000 dirhams for guilt-free spending. This 3,000 dirhams you can use for, let's say, starting a side hustle like buying a camera, or your shopping, or your manicure, pedicure, hair. Use it for guilt-free spending. You need to spend for yourself as well. So when do I start investing, saving, all of that? What are the goals? Do I just buy a property? Do I just start investing in some mutual funds? Or what is the step? This is how you go about it. Step 1, make sure you have 1.5 months of your expenses in your current account. Once you have achieved this goal, the next goal is to save up money so that you have 6 months worth of your expenses in your savings account. Once you've achieved the second goal, time to move on to the third goal. The third goal is to invest it into a 401k or a Roth IRA. So these are retirement savings plan. It might not be available in all of the, it's not readily available in UAE, but for me, I work in a US based company, so I do have retirement and pension funds within my company, and I keep aside money for that every single month as well. So speak to your HR, ask them if you have any retirement, pension funds, etc. that you can put money into, and then start that. That is your fourth goal. Then the next step is to start investing into mutual funds, stocks, etc. In the beginning, it's going to sound really scary. You don't know anything about it. So what I have done is I have opened an account in Sarva. You can't learn everything and then get investing. You're going to make mistakes anyway. So you start by investing maybe $50 into the account. If you use the link in my description below, you will get free 50 USD by clicking the link and just signing up. And once you have done that, you're going to keep learning as you go about it, and you're going to learn about different stocks and how it's performing, the markets, etc. And it's really interesting once you get a hang of it, because when it goes red, you realize that, oh, this is because this is happening in US and this is what's happening in Europe, and that's why these stocks are going down. So you'll be able to correlate both of it, and it gets really interesting as you go about. Then comes your fifth goal, investing into cryptocurrencies or high risk funds. The mistake that a lot of people do, they do not have their savings ready. They don't have 6 months in their account. They haven't invested in low risk accounts, but they hear about cryptocurrency and then they just start investing. It's so volatile. You're putting everything in line here, so don't do that. Do not increase your fixed expenses just because your salary increases. Warren Buffett is still living in the same house that he bought so many years ago, even if he's one of the richest guys on the planet. As mentioned in the book Almanac of Naval Ravikant, I just checked out how to pronounce it. At the end of the day, what everybody wants is freedom. Freedom of finances, freedom of time, freedom to do anything you want, whenever you want, wherever you want. And how do you do that? If when your salary increases, if your income increases, and you increase your expenses as well, when are you going to be able to retire? So you could either decrease your expenses and increase your income, or you could completely eradicate every sort of expenses, go become a monk, or you do something that you really love. Make sure when you're increased, when you get like a bonus, when you get a promotion or etc., go and have fun. Go for a staycation. Enjoy and celebrate that day. But then go back to where you were living. Automate this whole system. Paying your credit cards, allocating it to different banks, right? Automatically transfer it to your savings account, automatically move it aside for your investment, automatically moving it aside for your different kind of expenses and bill payments. Make it all automatic. We are only human. We won't be able to track it all manually. And if we do that, we might be able to do it this month, but it will not be consistent every single month. I did not do this. I did it all manually, and I got charged by Dubai First for one missed payment. And I'm going to tell you all the ways I got charged. You'll be surprised. I've been paying properly every single month, and when I missed the payment on 24th December 2022, I got charged billed charges, billed deferred finance, interest 350 dirhams, late payment fees 230 dirhams, altogether 1,276 dirhams. I called the bank. I asked them to cancel all of these, waive this off. I am very poor. Please help me out. They just managed to waive off the late payment fees of 230 dirhams. But I'm like, okay, something better than nothing. And it was a lesson that was very painful. I will never forget this lesson. I set up in my God mode on life planner system. I have mentioned it in my monthly plan every single month. So and so date, I will be paying off my credit cards in full. I also set up on Alexa. I have also set it up on my Outlook Teams as well. Every single where I've kept too many reminders, and also automatic payments. So I've made sure that this is set. Do not miss a payment. Do not make the banks rich. Pull out your credit score. I should have pulled this out sooner. I would have learned a lot. Now, my brain works in terms of report cards, just like how schools are. When I pulled it out, I noticed that my credit score was good, but not the best. And I wanted it to be the best. You will get so much details. Yeah, go to aecb.gov.ae to pull out your credit score. I think it costed around 84, 85 dirhams at that point in time. You have to put in your Emirates ID details and you can get the entire score. They have everything from what phone numbers you were using 10 years back to all of the payments that you missed. The payment that I missed for my Etisalat card 5 years back is also there, and that keeps adding up and your credit score keeps dropping if you don't make the payment on time. Every time I made a late payment for any of the credit cards, it's there. So every time you make a late payment, your credit score drops, and every single bank have access to this report, and that's how they decide whether you're a good candidate for the bank to give you a loan or a credit card. Now, back in the days, which is before all of this whole centralization system came about, the banks were not talking to each other, and this is why the baby boomers like my parents benefited, because they could go and have $1 million in debt in one bank, not pay it off, and then they could go to another bank and ask for $1 million again, and both of these banks will give it to you because they do not know how much you owe to the other banks. And then what, you could take all of this money and then go to Europe or India and like have fun and all of that stuff, right? But now that's not the case. Now if your credit score is low, you will not get a credit card or a loan, which means that if you do want to buy a car or you do want to buy a property, you need to pay it using your cash in full. Even a gadget, if you want to buy a Mac, you can still use your credit card and then pay it in small amount of money every single time, right? What you should be doing is try to hold on to cash. The person who's got cash in their account is the one who's got leverage and who's got better deals. If you pay it in full, you can always save money, but hold on to cash and try to make sure that your credit score is awesome so that you can leverage the banks to buy the things that you want to buy and still have money in your bank account. Personal finance is not just about financially planning your day-to-day life. It's about making sure that your future prospects of finances are also in place so that you can start investing and start retirement early as well. If there's one thing that I want you to take away from today's video, it is that I am no superhuman. I've definitely made too many mistakes, but I've not let that stop me. I started taking a hold of my personal finance only at the age of 28, 29, but I still managed to climb up that ladder and learn my way through making mistakes. Whichever part of the journey you are at, I wish you all the best. I hope you get started on your journey, and I hope we can all achieve our financial freedom at the earliest. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, if you enjoyed watching this video, then make sure to hit the like button, and if you found this helpful, do share it with your friends and your family as well. I will see you again in the next video. Bye. My mom is a story about my background. So my dad is a business owner. You could probably hear my mom in the back. So